Hi, this is James Cook of the University of Maine at Augusta, and I'm recording this video to provide some guidance to students who are working on a research proposal or a research project. Now, in the research methods in the social sciences course, I ask you to do both a research project in a group and a research proposal on your own. What are the elements of these? Well, fortunately, you have a really good start in your Earl Babby textbook, The Basics of Social Research. In chapter 4, page 123, you've got a step-by-step process which involves the beginning with the notion of setting out a problem and an objective, leading all the way up in an actual research project to the collection of data and the analysis of the data. Follow those steps in order and you will do fine. It can seem daunting at first, but the key is to begin with the problem or the objective. So there are two ways that you can phrase this, and I suggest you do both. The first is to describe a topic of interest. And this can be stated as a subject matter that you are interested in understanding variation in, because social research is pretty much always about some sort of variables, an outcome variable known as the dependent variable, and the different values it can take. And usually the essential research question is, why does this outcome that we're interested in tend to vary? Sometimes end up in one outcome, one value of the variable, sometimes in another value of the variable. What are the determinants of that? Or to speak non-causally, what are the associates of that? So that might mean in a particular applied instance, to provide an example, why is the crime rate higher in some cities than others? Or you might say, if you're interested in sexual behavior, what are the communities that have higher rates of sexually transmitted disease than others? So you notice there's a description of variation. It's formed into a question, and that question is surrounding your dependent variable. You can also state this as a sentence without a question mark as a topic. In our research study, we will be attempting to determine the correlates of rates of sexually transmitted disease in a community. So that's in that sentence telling you what the outcome is. It's also telling you the kind of object you're going to study. In this case, the example I've described for sexually transmitted diseases, you're going to be studying communities as your unit of analysis and your unit of observation. So that's not people. We don't always study people. So you'll want to talk about that. And once you have that worked out, you have the idea of the outcome variable you're interested in, and you have an idea about what it is that you want to study, to look at, to find out. What's the remaining aspect? Well, some independent variables. And where do you get those from? Well, step 2, literature review. You're going to go to pre-existing literature. I suggest you do that by looking at the UMA Libraries website or the Google Scholar website at scholar.google.com, and find prior academic research on the subject that is looking at what other researchers have found to be the correlates of whatever your outcome is. So that will suggest to you a series of independent variables. If there are some independent variables that you feel are not captured well enough, you may then suggest your own in addition, but you should always start with prior research. So then the next thing that you need to do, once you've thought about independent variables and dependent variables and explained why in a literature review that theoretically conceptualizes these variables, talks about the dimensions of these variables, you should have operationalizations that come out from those. So how is it that you would go and measure these variables, your independent and dependent variables, in the field? In order to answer that question, you'll need to pick a method. Are you going to be doing a survey? Are you going to be looking at secondary data? Are you going to be carrying out an experiment? These are all suggesting different ways of observing and therefore different kinds of measurement. Remember that operationalization results in a very clearly defined mode of measuring every one of your variables. So once you do that, and once you describe how you will go about doing that, you've reached the end of your research proposal. For your research project, in which you go all the way to the end, the only difference is that you will actually go out and you will carry out your research project. So you'll want to make sure that it is feasible for you to carry out in a short-term project. For instance, if you're a student of mine, within a semester's time. So making sure that you're modest in your goals, that you're not trying a grandiose project that's so huge that one or a few people couldn't possibly carry it out. That's important. Then, if you're going on and doing a research project, you'll want to talk about what it is that you found, present the data, and doing so by talking about what the overall trend is and how the trend varies according to different values of the independent variable is important. And then you'll want to make a conclusion finally. And that conclusion will describe what you found and discuss the implications of this. So if you can do that, if you cite your sources and have a references section at the end, you will have a good research proposal. Or if you go through and you actually get the data and analyze it, a research paper with results. What should this look like at the end? I've provided on our course Blackboard page a template. If you look on the left-hand side of our course Blackboard page for research methods, you'll see a link to Ross and Wu, where Wu is spelled W-U. That is a research paper that does each of these steps very explicitly, including the operationalizations of the variables, identifying whether they are independent variables or dependent variables, and going through and running an analysis, describing the method, and discussing the results. Use that as a template, and you will do very well. It's my hope that describing this process has been helpful to you. And remember that the first step is a very small step. Describe your topic and frame a research question. If you can do that, describe a topic and frame a research question in a draft this upcoming week, then I will be happy to review that for you as the first draft of the work that you will be engaging in. So, students in my class, look for a group assignment later this week and start thinking about your own individual research proposal. If you have any questions, please contact me at james.m.cook@maine.edu, and I would be glad to help you through this process. It's a little bit daunting at the beginning, but if you take small step by small step along the steps that Babby identifies and I've just reviewed, you know you can do it. And once you've done it once, it gets easier every time.